Hey, let's settle in for a quiet story tonight. I remember the day I moved into Hannah and Ethan's apartment. The late afternoon sunlight slanted through the small living room, painting golden stripes on the hardwood floor as I set down my single duffel bag of belongings. My heart pounded with a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. I was officially homeless until that morning, when Hannah, my best friend since childhood, insisted I come stay with her and her boyfriend until I got back on my feet. Hannah greeted me with a warm, tight hug at the door, while Ethan hovered a few steps behind, hands in his pockets. She smelled of lavender shampoo and the mint gum she was always chewing. "I'm so glad you're here, Ivy," she whispered, squeezing me. "You don't have to worry about anything now, okay?" I nodded against her shoulder, swallowing the lump in my throat. When she released me, I turned to Ethan and mustered a polite smile. We hadn't interacted much before beyond small talk at gatherings. He was taller than me by a head, with a closely trimmed beard and dark brown hair. He gave me a cordial, if slightly stiff, nod. "Hey, Ivy, welcome," Ethan said quietly. His tone was calm but neutral. I could sense his cautiousness. He kept his arms loosely crossed as we stood in the entryway. I tried not to take it personally. I was an unexpected addition to their home, after all. As grateful as I was to Hannah, I felt a ripple of awkwardness at being the intruder in their space. I silently promised myself I'd stay out of their way as much as humanly possible. I would be neat, quiet, helpful, the ideal guest. Hannah, bubbly and seemingly oblivious to any tension, picked up my duffel. "Come on, I made up the guest room for you," she said, leading me down the hall. Ethan offered a faint smile and stepped aside to let us through. The so-called guest room was actually a small den they'd hurriedly converted. It barely fit a pull-out couch and a little desk, but it was cozy. Fresh sheets and a soft blanket were already laid out, and, to my surprise, a small vase of daisies sat on the desk. The sight made my eyes sting with grateful tears. It was such a Hannah touch to add. Ethan lingered in the doorway, clearing his throat. "I'll let you get settled. Do you need anything? Water? Tea?" "I'm okay, thanks," I replied quickly. I offered an earnest smile. "And thank you, Ethan. Really. I know this is an inconvenience. I appreciate you letting me stay." He shook his head and managed a polite, tight smile in return. Thank Hannah. She wouldn't take no for an answer. There was a hint of wryness in his voice, but not unkindness. When he left, Hannah helped me unpack my meager belongings, filling the closet and a dresser drawer with my clothes. We chatted about inconsequential things, how loud the neighbors were, or the funny welcome mat she'd bought, carefully avoiding the heavy topic of how I ended up with nowhere else to go. I was grateful. She didn't press me. The wound of losing my job and then my apartment in quick succession was still raw. That night, I lay on the pull-out couch under the blanket Hannah provided, staring up at the dark ceiling. Down the hall, behind the closed door, I could hear the low murmur of Hannah and Ethan talking in their bedroom. I couldn't catch any words, just the cadence of Hannah's soft voice and Ethan's deeper rumble. My mind, traitorous and anxious, filled in the blanks. Maybe they're arguing about me. I imagined Ethan expressing doubts about having me here, and Hannah defending the decision. The thought made my stomach twist with guilt. They had been living a comfortable life as a couple, and now I'd disrupted that. I told myself that if I even sensed I was causing a strain between them, I would leave, even if it meant a shelter or sleeping in my car. As I rolled onto my side, a tiny beam of streetlight through the curtains illuminated the vase of daisies on the desk. Hannah's gesture, Ethan's cautious accommodation, all of it weighed on me. I felt simultaneously grateful and terribly burdensome. Little did I know how impossible the promise I made to myself would be, or how entangled our lives were about to become. At that moment, all I felt was tired, grateful, and determined to be the perfect, invisible houseguest. And that little spark of hope I felt was about to kindle into something far more complicated. A couple of weeks later, the topic of hiking came up one evening. Ethan mentioned a trail he wanted to try, and Hannah promptly volunteered me as his hiking buddy since she wasn't keen on going herself. I agreed, admittedly excited by the idea. The next morning, Ethan and I set off on the hike. The drive to the trailhead took about an hour, and at first we stuck to small talk, which was still progress, considering we'd mostly just exchanged polite greetings up till then. But once we were walking under the canopy of trees, the remaining awkwardness between us dissolved. The woods were quiet and beautiful, and conversation flowed more naturally than it ever had in the apartment. We talked about everything from the silliest movies we secretly loved to memorable trips from our pasts. I discovered he had a goofy streak behind his usually serious demeanor, and he laughed at my stories as if we'd been friends for years, instead of virtual strangers sharing a space. Midway through, we rested by a pretty little waterfall tucked in the woods. I was perched on a rock, enjoying the cool spray of water on my face, when Ethan dug into his backpack and produced a small bag of gummy bears with a conspiratorial grin. Apparently, he'd packed them as a treat, knowing Hannah would never approve of candy as hiking fuel. She had insisted we take her protein bars, which we'd tried earlier and found painfully cardboard-like. We shared the gummy bears with mischievous delight, like kids sneaking sweets, laughing as we promised not to tell Hannah. In that moment, I saw him truly relax and light up with boyish joy, and it warmed me to witness it. I felt myself relax too, shedding the self-consciousness I'd been carrying. By the time we headed back, I realized I was genuinely enjoying myself, and Ethan's company. My legs were pleasantly achy, and my heart felt lighter than it had in ages. On the drive home, when an old 80s power ballad came on the radio, we both unabashedly sang along. Ethan belted out the cheesy chorus dramatically, and I couldn't stop giggling. "Don't tell Hannah I know all the words," he joked afterward, and I mimed zipping my lips. It became a silly little bond between us, one that felt surprisingly natural. When we arrived home in the late afternoon, Hannah was eager to hear about our adventure. She practically bounced in excitement as we described the sweeping views from the trail and the little moments that had made us laugh. Like the moment a spider dangled from a tree in front of Ethan's face and he yelped loud enough to scare a flock of birds. We talked over each other in our enthusiasm, and Hannah kept saying how glad she was that we had fun. "I'm so happy you two hit it off," she exclaimed, beaming, after we'd showered and regrouped in the living room. "See, Ivy, I knew you'd bring out his fun side." She elbowed Ethan playfully. "And thank you for entertaining my best friend all day." Ethan chuckled. "It was my pleasure. We had a great time." He caught my eye and gave a small, sincere smile that made my stomach flutter. Just a tiny bit. Hannah teased that she was glad to avoid any blisters and joked that next time she'd send me as her stand-in for all muddy outings. We all laughed. Everything felt easy and warm that evening. Over dinner, Ethan and I found ourselves recalling little jokes or mishaps from the hike, almost forgetting for a moment that Hannah hadn't been there with us. At one point, I noticed Hannah watching me with a thoughtful, unreadable expression, as I animatedly recounted how Ethan had tried to pronounce some bird's scientific name and butchered it. The look passed quickly, and she was smiling again. But later I wondered if I'd imagined that brief cloud in her eyes. Still, I went to bed that night feeling more optimistic than I had in a long time. Not only had I survived a whole day with Ethan without any awkwardness, I felt like I'd actually gotten to know him, and I genuinely liked who I'd come to know. He wasn't just Hannah's boyfriend in the background. He was Ethan, a person with a witty sense of humor and a kind streak a mile wide. Maybe, I dared to think, this living arrangement would turn out okay after all. A week or so later, another small adventure presented itself. One Thursday evening, Hannah had to attend a work seminar and would be home late, leaving Ethan and me to fend for ourselves for dinner. Early that evening, we both hovered in the kitchen, peering dubiously at the remaining kale and quinoa salad from the night before, one of Hannah's health-conscious creations. Ethan poked at the container and made a face. "Kale salad, day 2. Yum," he said dryly. I couldn't help but laugh. "She means well," I murmured, echoing his earlier words. "But I'm not sure a cold salad is going to cut it for me tonight either." He glanced toward the door, as if to ensure Hannah was truly gone, then leaned in and half whispered, "I could really go for a burger right about now." Our eyes met. It was like a mischievous idea passed between us without a single word. We both broke into slow grins. "Should we?" I dared, raising an eyebrow. Ethan wiped an imaginary tear of relief from his eye. "Thought you'd never ask." Within 15 minutes, we were back with takeout from the best burger joint in town. The smell of greasy, delicious food filled the apartment as we spread our contraband feast on the coffee table. Burgers loaded with bacon and cheese, a large carton of crispy fries, the works. It felt decadent and a little rebellious, considering Hannah's wholesome food rules. We plopped on the floor, cross-legged on the rug. "To living dangerously," Ethan quipped, raising his soda can. "To clogged arteries," I added, clinking my can to his. We dissolved into giggles, probably giddy from the sheer indulgence of it all. The burgers were heavenly. We devoured them with the kind of abandon that you only can when you know you won't be judged. Between big, messy bites, we chatted and joked. It amazed me how comfortable I felt. A month ago, I could barely string 2 sentences together around Ethan without feeling like a burden. Now we were sharing inside jokes and wiping ketchup off our chins. Speaking of ketchup, at one point I managed to smear some on my face without noticing. Ethan reached over without a word and gently dabbed the corner of my mouth with a napkin. The gesture was so small and natural that it stunned me for a second. His fingertips grazed my chin lightly. I looked up and found him looking at me, a half smile on his lips. It was the kind of thing a boyfriend might do for his girlfriend. The thought flashed, and I immediately felt a confusing swirl of warmth and guilt. "All clear," he said softly, showing me the red smudge on the napkin. "Thanks," I murmured. My cheeks warmed, from the moment or from embarrassment, I wasn't sure. Probably both. An awkward beat passed, but then Ethan cleared his throat and made a corny joke about how many napkins we were going through. Grateful, I laughed, and the mood lightened again. We fell back into easy chatter as we polished off the rest of the fries. Afterward, we were very diligent co-conspirators. We double-bagged the trash and took it straight to the outdoor dumpster. Then we opened windows to air out the telltale scent of fried food, and I lit a scented candle for good measure. By the time Hannah got home, The apartment smelled like vanilla and nothing of our junk food escapade. That night, as Hannah sat at the table picking at her reheated quinoa salad and chatting about her seminar, Ethan and I shared a secret glance. I don't think I'd ever had a secret with someone against my best friend before, and a pang of guilt tugged at me. But I comforted myself that this secret was harmless, just burgers and fries. Nothing that would actually hurt her. Later, lying in my pull-out bed, I replayed the whole evening in my mind. The illicit thrill of sneaking out with Ethan for junk food, the way we laughed in the car with the windows down, singing along to pop songs and acting like teenagers cutting class, and that gentle moment when he wiped ketchup off my face. My heart fluttered at the memory, then sank in equal measure. It hit me with a bittersweet clarity. I liked him. I really, really liked him. Not just as a friend. Somewhere between those shared gummy bears on the hike and the stolen burger tonight, my feelings had shifted into dangerous territory. I pressed a pillow over my face as if I could smother the thought. How could this happen? Ethan was Hannah's boyfriend. Hannah, who had taken me in when I was at rock bottom. The guilt was almost overwhelming, but under it, a tiny spark of joy persisted. Joy from feeling something again, from the connection I felt with him. I told myself it was just a crush brought on by gratitude and proximity. A silly infatuation because Ethan was kind to me and I was lonely. I resolved, right there in the dark, to push those feelings deep down. I would not hurt Hannah. She didn't deserve that, and I wouldn't betray her trust. I vowed that I would get over this, whatever it was, and never let it show. For a while, I truly tried to keep that vow. In the days that followed, I made a conscious effort to keep my distance from Ethan. I spent more time out of the apartment, lingering at the library under the pretense of job hunting, or taking long walks around the city. In the evenings, I would retire early to read or feign headaches so that Hannah and Ethan could have time alone without me. I figured if I limited our interactions, my stupid crush might wither away from neglect. Ethan noticed something was off pretty quickly. A few days into my self-imposed distancing campaign, he caught me in the kitchen after dinner while Hannah was in the shower. I was tidying up the dishes when I sensed him standing behind me. "Hey," he said in a gentle voice. "You okay? You seem quiet lately." I plastered on what I hoped was a convincing smile. "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Just, a lot on my mind with applications and stuff." His brow furrowed slightly. He dried his hands on a towel, looking like he was weighing whether to press the issue. "If you're worried about the job thing, don't be. Something will come through. And you can always talk to me or Hannah if you're stressed, right?" "I know. Thank you," I said, focusing hard on a plate I was scrubbing. The kindness in his voice was making it worse. How could I possibly talk to him about the real reason I was acting weird? He hovered a moment longer. "All right, just making sure," he said softly. I dared a quick glance at him and saw genuine concern in his eyes. That made my chest ache. "I'm okay, promise," I added, trying to sound upbeat. With a reluctant nod, he left it at that as Hannah's footsteps approached. I exhaled, releasing a tension I hadn't realized had coiled in me. My resolve to avoid anything that might deepen the bond between Ethan and me was soon put to the test in a big way. Hannah had to go out of town for a weekend, a short trip back to her parents' house to help with preparations for her dad's 60th birthday. It was planned that she'd be away Friday through Sunday. The night before, she was fussing around. making sure we both had enough leftovers and clean laundry and other sweet, unnecessary worries. "Don't coddle them, honey," Ethan teased her. "We'll survive a couple days without you." Hannah stuck her tongue out at him, then turned to me. "You guys will be all right, right? I feel bad leaving you, Ivy. I know it might be weird being here without me." I gave her a reassuring smile. "Go. Enjoy time with your family. We'll be just fine. I might even finally get Ethan to watch that terrible rom-com you refused to sit through," I joked. She laughed. "Good luck with that." Then she hugged me, and then him, and with a final flurry of blown kisses, she was out the door and on the road. As Ethan and I waved her car down the street, an uneasy flutter hit my stomach. It was just the two of us now. 48 hours to get through. "You can do this," I told myself. "Just stick to your plan. Keep busy. Keep a respectful distance." The first night, Friday, passed without incident. Ethan worked late in the spare room turned office, and I binge-watched a reality baking show in the living room, each of us politely doing our own thing. We said goodnight around 11, and I breathed a sigh of relief as I closed the door to the guest room. One night down. It was Saturday that unraveled everything. The day started quietly. Ethan went for a morning run. I slept in. We crossed paths around noon in the kitchen, where we ended up having a light lunch together and chatting amiably about the news. It was nice, normal, and I kept a strict grip on myself the whole time, mentally drawing lines I promised I wouldn't cross. After lunch, I retreated to my room to study some modules from the free coding class I'd enrolled in, while Ethan busied himself with errands and a bit of work. By evening, though, the apartment felt too quiet. I was on the couch idly flipping channels, and Ethan wandered in, looking a little bored. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Feel like a movie. I could use a break." It was such an innocent invitation, and I did feel lonely and restless, so I agreed. I told myself it was just a movie. Hannah would totally approve of us hanging out platonically. We settled on a comedy thriller that had been on our mutual watch list. Ethan even broke out the stovetop popcorn maker. He drizzled real butter on the popcorn with a proud grin. "Decadent, huh?" he joked, referring to Hannah's usual ban on overly buttery snacks. I had to laugh. She's gone one day and we're already corrupting our arteries. We settled on the couch with the bowl of popcorn between us. At first, we sat at opposite ends, like we had invisible chaperones ensuring propriety. But, as the movie played, both of us gradually inched toward the middle without really noticing. The movie was actually pretty good, a mix of laughs and suspense, and at one point a jump scare made me yelp and grab Ethan's forearm instinctively. He burst out laughing at my reaction, and I did too, embarrassment tinging my cheeks. I started to pull my hand back, but he patted my hand lightly in a friendly gesture, as if to say it was all right. I left it there a second longer than I should have before I finally withdrew, my skin tingling where I had held on to him. After that, the space between us on the couch was decidedly smaller. We shared the popcorn, bumping hands occasionally and joking when one of us accidentally tossed a piece into the other's lap. By the time the credits rolled, I realized I was nestled comfortably against his side, my head leaning on his shoulder. He didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, I felt his cheek resting lightly on the top of my head. It felt easy, warm, and dangerously good. Neither of us made a move to get up immediately. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater kicking on. I knew I should pull away and go to bed, but a part of me wanted to make the moment last a little longer. We started talking in the dim light, our voices hushed. We joked about the plot holes in the movie. Then that meandered into sharing silly childhood anecdotes. I told him about the time in 5th grade I tried to cut my own bangs with plastic craft scissors, with predictably awful results. And he told me about getting lost on a camping trip with his older brother. We laughed softly in the dark. At some point, our light-hearted banter gave way to a comfortable silence. My eyes drifted shut, lulled by the warmth of the room and his presence. The last thing I remember was the steady sound of Ethan's breathing beside me, and the feeling of my cheek against the soft cotton of his shirt. I was jolted awake by a sharp gasp. My eyes flew open to bright morning light flooding the living room. I was still on the couch. A blanket, at some point Ethan had pulled one over us, tangled around my legs. At first, I felt a simple, pleasant drowsiness. I'd clearly slept deeply. I was warm, and there was a solid weight against me. In confusion, I realized my head was on Ethan's chest, and his arm was draped around my waist. Sometime during the night we had curled up together. It took only another heartbeat to register who had gasped. Hannah stood a few feet away, just inside the front door, her overnight bag still in her hand, and a look of absolute shock on her face. A surge of adrenaline, pure, cold terror, shot through me. I scrambled upright so fast I nearly toppled off the couch, disentangling myself from Ethan. He woke with a start as I leapt to my feet. "Hannah," I blurted, my voice cracking. She wasn't due back until that evening. You're back early." Hannah's face was pale, eyes wide and shiny with what looked like tears threatening. She stared at me, then at Ethan, who was now sitting up, looking stunned and disoriented. Ethan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The silence was loud and terrible. "I woke up early and decided to beat the traffic," Hannah said, but her voice was distant, as if on autopilot. Her gaze was fixed on the scene she'd walked in on, the blanket half on the floor, me standing there with guilty written all over my face, and Ethan still on the couch, his hair mussed from sleep and eyes wide with alarm. "Hannah, this—" "It's not what it looks like," Ethan managed, standing now as well. His hands were up defensively, and I realized I had mine out in front of me too, like we were caught in a holdup. Hannah shut the front door slowly and set her bag down. She was frighteningly calm, but her trembling hands gave away her emotion. "It looks," she said, her voice thin and brittle, "like I come home and find my best friend and my boyfriend, cuddled up, sleeping together on the couch." The last part wavered. Hurt was starting to bleed through the shock. I felt sick to my stomach. "We fell asleep watching a movie. That's all it was," I said, desperation making my voice shake. "Nothing happened, Hannah." Ethan stepped forward. "I swear, Han, it was innocent. We just dozed off." "Did you even know I was coming home this morning?" she interrupted, voice rising a notch. We exchanged an uneasy glance. I saw the realization dawn on her face. "No, of course not." She answered her own question, a flash of anger now sharpening her tone. "God, how long has this been going on?" My heart dropped into my shoes. "This?" "Hannah, there's no this," I pleaded. My eyes burned with sudden tears. "It was just a stupid accident." Hannah's eyes flicked back and forth between us. She looked so hurt and lost that it broke something inside me. I don't even know what to say," she stammered. "I mean, I asked you to look after each other, not—" Her voice cracked. She clenched her jaw and pressed her hand to her forehead, as if steadying herself. Ethan took a cautious step toward her. "Hannah, I love you. This looks bad, but we didn't betray you. Not in the way you're thinking." His voice was gentle, imploring. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh, wiping at her eyes. "Not in the way I'm thinking. So you didn't sleep together, great. But I come, home to find you in each other's arms, and somehow that's supposed to be fine." The hurt and sarcasm in her voice cut. I stepped forward, my hands trembling. "I know how it looks, and you have every right to be upset." My words tumbled out fast, my throat tight. It was my fault. I fell asleep on him. I was leaning on him during the movie, and we just drifted off. It's entirely my fault, Han." My voice broke on her nickname. She stared at me, tears spilling now. "Your fault. Do you have any idea how betrayed I feel right now?" I had no answer, only a whimpering. "I'm so sorry." I could feel hot tears sliding down my cheeks. Hannah turned her gaze to Ethan, and there was a fury in it now. "And you. I trusted you. How could you let this happen?" Ethan looked as if she'd slapped him. "It was a mistake. I should have been more responsible. I'm sorry." He sounded miserable. She nodded with a bitter huff. "A mistake?" Her eyes flicked to the blanket on the couch, then back to us. "Maybe I was born yesterday, but people don't just accidentally end up tangled together like that, unless there's something more going on." "There isn't," I insisted. But even as I said it, an overwhelming guilt washed over me. Because there was something more, at least on my side. I did have feelings, however much I tried to bury them. And maybe that had subtly influenced every choice I'd made that led to this moment. I felt my resolve crumble. Hannah watched my face, and a terrible realization seemed to dawn on her. Her eyes widened, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "Oh my God, you have feelings for him." My blood ran cold. "Hannah, I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't form the words. My stunned silence was answer enough. She made a soft, anguished sound and covered her mouth. Ethan started to speak. I didn't know." But she cut him off with a glare that could melt steel. A tense, electric moment of silence hung among the three of us. My world was ending right in front of me, and it was entirely my own doing. Finally, Hannah spoke, voice eerily calm. "Ivy, I think you should leave." It was like a knife to the heart, even though I had expected and probably deserved it. I nodded mutely, wiping my eyes. "I'll pack my things." My voice was barely audible. I walked to the little guest room on wooden legs and threw my belongings into my duffel haphazardly, hands shaking so hard I could barely zip it up. Through my haze of tears, I caught a glimpse of the framed photo on the bedside table, a picture of me and Hannah at the beach last summer, arms slung around each other, carefree and laughing. My vision blurred completely at that. I emerged to find them in the same spots. Hannah standing rigidly by the armchair, arms crossed tightly as if holding herself together, and Ethan a couple steps from her, looking desperate and helpless. Both their heads turned towards me and the duffel bag slung over my shoulder. This was it. The end of one of the best friendships I'd ever had, and possibly the end of their relationship too. All because of me. I wanted so badly to rewind time, to erase every moment of inappropriate closeness, to take a different path. But I couldn't. So I just stood there, small and broken, and said, "I'm so sorry, Hannah." The words were feeble and inadequate, but they were all I had. She didn't reply, just looked away as fresh tears slipped down her cheeks. Ethan stepped forward as if he might hug her or reach for her, but she subtly leaned back, rejecting comfort from either of us. Knowing there was nothing left to do, I walked to the door. My heart felt like it had been hollowed out. I hesitated, hand on the knob, needing to say something more, something that could convey the remorse swallowing me whole. But no words came. All I managed, in a cracked whisper, was, "Goodbye." I left, quietly closing the door behind me. I don't remember the journey from their apartment to the motel I checked into. Somehow, I ended up here, a few miles away, in a drab little room that smells like old carpet and lost hopes. That first day is a blur of tears and numbness. I know I cried until I exhausted myself. Now, some time has gone by since that awful morning. I'm still at this motel, at least until I figure out my next steps. Hannah hasn't contacted me, and I don't blame her. I heard from a mutual friend that she's okay, but beyond that, I know nothing. I assume she's not speaking to Ethan either, or maybe she is. It's not my place to know. I wouldn't blame her if she never forgave me, or even if she ended things with Ethan. Whatever happens between them now, I know that I've set off a pain that won't be easily healed. Alone in this tiny room, I replay everything on an endless, tormenting loop. I keep asking myself how I could do this, how I let my loneliness, my feelings, override the loyalty I owed my best friend. I think of the many junctures where I could have chosen differently. If only I had kept a healthier distance, if only I had been honest with myself sooner and moved out before anything like this happened. If only, if only. The person I was when I arrived at Hannah's was determined to never hurt her. Yet I did. Does it even matter that I never meant to? In the end, impact matters more than intent. I betrayed the person who showed me nothing but kindness. I also betrayed myself in a way. I became someone I'm not proud of. Maybe I'm just irredeemably selfish. Or maybe I'm a good person who made one terribly bad decision that snowballed. I honestly don't know. I've never been this unsure of my own character. I lost a friend, the safe roof over my head, and whatever budding thing was between Ethan and me, real or imagined, all in one fell swoop. And I have no one to blame but myself. I wouldn't forgive me if I were Hannah. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive myself either. So, I have to ask, am I the asshole in this situation? Am I the unforgivable friend who let her own loneliness and feelings wreck the lives of the people who helped her? Or was I a broken person who stumbled into an emotional mess that got out of hand? I genuinely don't know. I'm soul-searching for an answer. What do you think?